Hi everyone, a warm welcome. Mo and I decided we're going to call this a podcast for clarification. So welcome to podcast number 2. And this podcast is all about where it all began. Where did I start my journey? So I'm going to go all the way back to London, England, where I was born. And at the age of 3, it's the earliest I can remember, I would get visitation from spirit. I didn't know it at the time. It wasn't until later in my journey that I understand that I was getting these visitations. And a few little stories. I would lie in bed, always wanting to go to bed to dream, because I love to dream, and I'd get all these visions and ideas. And when I was lying there, I would always thought before I'd go to sleep, where am I going to wake up in the morning? And am I going to wake up in my physical bed with my family, or am I going to be in that other space? So that's the earliest memory I have of spirit world and the physical world. And I would do really strange things, like I would take my bedding and I would sleep in the cupboard, because I felt protected, and I'd close the doors so that I was cocooned and felt this protection. Or I would sleep under my bed. So I did these strange things, and often I'd be in my clothes as well, and my family always laughed to say I was just lazy and I didn't want to make my bed, but that wasn't the case. And so I would have these bright sort of blue lights that would come and sort of surround me, and I would have these amazing dreams all the time, and so that's where it all began. One of the best things my parents ever did for us was they decided to leave England, where both my parents grew up in poverty, and they wanted a better life for their 3 girls. And so we moved out to New Zealand, and it really, I think New Zealand was the place that taught me so much for the work that I'm doing now. And so growing up in New Zealand, there was a sense of freedom. I grew up with the Māori children, and I learned a lot about nature, herbs, singing, how they just loved one another in community. Sure, there are problems with poverty and other things, but there's so much richness when you work with and are part of an Indigenous culture. And so from that, I grew up, playing many sports, running around barefoot, just having this sense of freedom, which I just absolutely loved. And I was really lucky. Whatever I did, I could turn my hand to anything and be really good at sports, not knowing why. But now, once again, I was working with spirit, and they guided me and they helped me. So this made, I think, a huge impact in where I am now. So growing up, I also became a primary school teacher, and I loved to teach, and I loved to work with children. Later on in my life, I then moved to Australia, where I still taught in schools, but I also got an impulse to go into well-being. And that came because my mother, while I was actually still in New Zealand, died from lung cancer. And so I wanted to know more about a more natural way of healing and being. And so when I went to Australia, I also got well-being qualifications. So I have a Reiki master. I went to China and learned a little bit of tuina massage, and I'll save that story because that's a really interesting story about the people that I learnt from. And then in Australia, I had a well-being business with my good friends, Charlene being one of my closest friends in the world. And we did lots of amazing things together there. And we honed our healing work. But I could see there that our healing centre was a community centre. And we were bringing people, together, talking, sharing, and this was something that was really, really dear to my heart. So sense of community is where I've ended up now. And one of the things, the visions that has come to me, the two things is the €12 program to get economic power into women's hands. And the other thing we're going to set up is called the Wowee Co-op. And this is basically a co-op mainly for women, so that they can do business together, ethical, fair trade, and help one another. And to make sure that we run these villages all around the world, and to get economic power into women's hands so that we can start to make the decisions for the world. So that's where I'm going to leave it today. If you have any questions, I will go in more depth about specific things, but that's where it all started as a 3-year-old in England, and Spirit have been working with me ever since. I don't tell so many people about this because I want them to see that I'm a really capable businesswoman. And so it's now time to bring the spirituality with the business together, so people who understand what I'm doing can also, use it as a model for their own journeys. So I'm wishing everybody very great things in the world. With much haroha, Debbie, over and out. I'll see you next time.